All right, let's talk about a persuasion tactic that kind of flips one of the biggest marketing best practices right on its head. If you've always believed that shorter forms are the key to everything, well, you're going to want to stick around. We're about to see why that might not always be the case.
You know the drill in conversion rate optimization, right? It's practically the first commandment. To get more leads, you got to shorten your forms. Less friction, fewer fields, more signups. It just makes sense. But what if I told you that sometimes that golden rule is just plain wrong?
Yep, you're seeing that right. Negative 14%. That's not a gain, it's a loss. A pretty big drop in conversions that happened when a marketing pro did exactly what everyone thought was the right move.
So here's the story behind that number. Michael Agard, over at Unbounce, was looking at this really long form on a website, and his first thought was exactly what yours would be: shorten it. So he convinced the client to chop off 3 fields, a third of the entire form. And the result? That 14% drop? Turns out, he'd accidentally removed the very fields people wanted to fill out and only left the annoying, high-friction stuff like name and email.
And this right here is a huge puzzle for us marketers. If just making a form shorter isn't the magic fix we all thought it was, then what is? How is it possible that a longer process could sometimes get you more sales? The answer? It turns out isn't in some newfangled web design trend, but in a psychological principle that's been around for more than 50 years.
And that answer is something called the foot in the door technique. The whole idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of going right in for the big commitment, like asking for someone's contact info, you start with a really small, easy to say yes to request. And that first little yes basically props the door open for a much bigger yes later on.
And listen, this is not some new marketing fad. This technique has been seriously studied and tested since the 1960s. To really get a feel for how powerful it is, we've got to go all the way back to the original study that started it all.
This was the big question that 2 researchers, Friedman and Fraser, were asking way back in 1966. I mean, for them, it was about getting past the front door for a sales pitch. For us, it's about getting that form submission, that lead, that sale. The fundamental challenge? It's exactly the same. And this chart just shows it so perfectly. In their famous study, they went around asking homeowners to put this massive, kind of ugly drive carefully sign on their front lawn. So when they just went straight in with that big request, you can see less than 20% said yes. But for the second group, oh, they did something different. First, they asked them to put a tiny little 3-inch sign in their window. Super small request. Then, 2 weeks later, they came back and asked about putting up that big, ugly sign. And this time, an incredible 76% of them said yes. That is the foot in the door technique in its purest form.
So, what is going on here? Why is this so insanely effective? What's happening inside our heads that makes a tiny yes pave the way for a huge one? Well, it boils down to 2 really powerful psychological forces that, as a marketer, you absolutely need to get.
Okay, first up is something called self-perception theory. The moment someone agrees to that small first request, their brain does a little shift. They start thinking, I guess I'm a helpful person, or, I'm the kind of person who engages with this brand. And once that new self-image is there, it's way easier for them to agree to the next request because saying no would go against who they now think they are.
And the second piece of the puzzle is the commitment and consistency principle. You've probably heard of this one from Robert Cialdini. We are just hardwired with this deep nagging need to finish things we start. It's like seeing a progress bar that's at 25%. Once a user answers that first simple question, that bar has started to fill. The psychological pull to see it get to 100% is so strong it keeps them going, even when the next steps get a little tougher.
Okay, so that's the psychology. It's fascinating, right? But how do we actually turn this into more leads and more sales for our business? Let's get practical and break down how you can build this into a real-world digital marketing strategy. So here's the modern playbook, the multi-step form. Instead of hitting someone with one giant, scary form, you break it into bite-sized pieces. You start with something super easy, something non-threatening, like how many employees work at your company, or what's your biggest business challenge? Boom, that's the small yes. Then you ask for a few more relevant details. And only at the very end, after they've already put in the time and effort, do you ask for the scary stuff: name, email, phone number.
Now, a word of caution. This is not a silver bullet you should use on every single page of your website. It tends to work best when your visitors are already a bit warmed up. Think middle or bottom of the funnel. It's absolutely perfect for things like getting an insurance quote or a project estimate where people expect they need to give you some info to get a result. And the key is that first request has to be simple, but not so simple that it's meaningless. And honestly, this whole strategy is often less about getting more leads and more about getting better quality leads.
But of course, with any powerful tool, if you use it the wrong way, it can blow up in your face. So let's talk about the common mistakes that get that metaphorical door slammed right on your foot.
This right here, this is the #1 reason this strategy fails online. People value their anonymity. If your very first question asks for something that identifies who they are, all the alarm bells go off. You haven't earned that trust yet, and they'll just feel like you're rushing the sale, and they will bounce.
Let me give you a super clear example. Let's say you're a B2B company. You might be tempted to start your form with, "What is your firm's name?" It seems like a smart way to qualify the lead, right? But it instantly strips them of their anonymity. They know you can look them up. A much better approach is to ask something anonymous, like, "How many employees do you have?" It's still a great business question, but it lets them keep that crucial sense of privacy.
And if you need proof, the data on this is just staggering. One agency, Miramind, actually tested this and discovered that their normal single-page forms got 80 to 180% more leads than their fancy multi-step forms. And why? Because those multi-step forms made one classic error. They asked for an email address way too early in the process. That one little mistake completely killed the entire strategy.
So the next time you're building out a landing page or thinking about your lead gen funnel, I want you to stop asking, how can I make this shorter? Instead, ask yourself this question. What is the simple, non-threatening, but still meaningful first step you can ask a customer to take? Find that small yes, and you might just open the door to way more conversions than you ever thought possible.